So, as the stage is being set for the next panel, allow me to introduce it. The next discussion is the revolution in higher education. As we've heard throughout the past 2 days, the Indian government intends to double higher education enrollments over the next decade. Achieving this goal will require regulatory changes, more online education, additional offline enrollments, and the expansion of affordable options. In this panel, leaders across the higher education and workforce ecosystem will discuss what needs to be done. So with that, allow me to introduce our panel, Mohan, Kannegal, CEO of Emeritus India, Madan, Pillutla, the Dean of Indian School of Business, Professor Rudra, Pratap, the founding Vice Chancellor of Plaksha University, Pratham, Mittal, founder, Masters Union, and then, this is a good one for me, Lisa Marsh, Ryerson, University Provost, Southern New Hampshire University. Coming up.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Cool. So we're just doing a slight twist in the topic itself because all of us felt that it would make a lot of sense to discuss globalizing Indian education as part of the revolution. Also because of the expertise of the panel that we have here. So I'll start with that. We have a lot of ambition to bring in foreign students into India, into the Indian education system. And much of the discussion and the questions today will be around that. So my first question to Pratham would be, why do you think somebody living outside of India, living in, let's say, Ithaca in New York or Warsaw or Poland or anywhere else, why would somebody living in some of those corners of the world want to come to India to study? Right? So that's...
Sure. I don't know if I have an answer to that question, right, why someone from New York would come to India. But what I can tell you is that there are lots of other countries in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in larger South Asia, from where we get lakhs of students coming into India. Right. And generally that gets ignored in the popular media. We always complain that, Americans and Europeans and British are not coming to India for education, but we forget that we almost have, as you were just checking, 2.5 lakh students coming into India every year, and almost 8 to 10 lakh students enrolled in Indian universities from countries outside of India.
Wow, okay.
Right? And if you look at and compare it with the number of students who leave India to study abroad, the difference is not as much. So even though we might be net exporter of students, it's not by a very huge margin that we believe it is.
Wow. Thanks for that, Pratham. But where is that number coming from? You're saying we are receiving about 800,000 students a year, almost 1 million. So where's your data source?
This is all in the external affairs visa. So we count the number of visas given by the Indian government as student visas and number of visas granted to Indians abroad.
Oh wow, okay. So that was actually that is a huge surprise for me too. The assumption usually is we don't receive as many foreign students, but I think we receive almost that's nearly 1 million foreign students.
Yeah,
so
that's square million.
Yeah. So my next question is to Rudra Pratap. One could make the argument that India is underserved in terms of education. So why should we be getting these 800,000 students, educating them? Maybe we should focus on India itself. What's your view on that?
You just think about the term education. Education, and when you think about university is all about universal education. So it's not that because you have underserved population, you stop getting people from outside. That helps in your education. So when students from outside the country come, or faculty members from other countries join universities, it creates an ecosystem of learning which is unparalleled. Your history is full of that. Takshila University in 800 BC had students from all over the world. All over the world. There were 10,000 students at that university, right? So universities naturally attract people who want education or who want gyan, as we call it, right? So if you think about what kind of ecosystem will provide the best education, it's imperative that you have people from all over the world. Wonderful. So even though you have underserved population, of course, I mean, we should have more universities. That's the answer. The answer is not to stop people from outside coming in. It should be more than welcome.
Wonderful, thanks for the Pratap. So, yeah, in an insular world, I mean, in a world where we see a lot of insular influence, I think that having more global students will make our students have a wider worldview in some sense. Yes. Absolutely. So, the next one is to Lisa, especially since you have an outside-in view of what we do in education. What are some areas or topics or programs that you think India is uniquely placed to offer foreign students?
Yeah, I just want to first say that you brought up Ithaca because Rudra and I realized that we were neighbors for 9 years and did not even know it.
Right.
Near Ithaca, New York. So here we are in India together. And jumping off, answering your question, Mohan, but also jumping off about what you said. You know, the need, not just in India, but in the US and around the world for quality education is so extraordinary that if all of us as universities are doing our most excellent work, that's how we're going to meet the need. So I think as you change the topic to globalization, the revolution has already started, and globalization in many ways is the revolution, how we can work together. What a great conference this is. I'm a first-timer to GSV. It's just been wonderful, but I'm looking out at my partners here in India. So Asim, hello to Amity University, and we're glad to have Univo here and also Avenue Learning. And my newest partners here on the panel, what you have to offer, I think, is your excellence in the unique programs that you run. You're quite revolutionary as universities, the models that you've developed. And I would be honored for our students at Southern New Hampshire University to study with you and for me to continue to learn from you. So I think that what India has to offer is a variety of models of colleges and universities and training and skilling that would be of interest not just to companies, corporations in the United States or other nations, but also to our students. I know Julia, she was talking about radical social inclusion. I would say that the way we spur on the revolution is to really dive into and drive into radical collaboration among us. It truly will take each and every one of us to get this right.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much, Lisa. So, yeah, this is a question to Madan, and then I'll come back to all of you with the same question. Madan, especially with your experience at LBS and also now with ISB, what are some models that have worked well in other countries who are attracting foreign students? Right? So, for example, how does LBS attract foreign students? What have they done? What are some things we could learn?
LBS has London, which is terrific, right? So, so let's just begin with that. But there is a serious aspect to this, right? So if you look at where people go to, whether it's the US, and the US is the primary place that most people want to go to, it turns out it's the economic opportunities that people have when they go to those places. So of course, people go there for a fantastic education in some of the great universities that are out there. And a small minority of the people come back to their own countries to use that education in their countries. But a vast majority of people who go, they go because of the economic opportunities that those countries afford, right? So that's the model. If you look at it, that is the one model that works really well. So if you're thinking about in India, so what would that be? It would be exactly that, you know. So can we be like the way that the United States is, which is open its doors for talent to come there to get trained and then help in the development of that country? Can we be that open-minded? Can we be that, have that kind of a spirit of welcoming talent from all over the world? That's the way that we want to be as a country. But as institutions, so the way that we want to think about is there are certain parts of the world where coming and getting educated here, and especially I'm thinking in terms of management, but we can apply it in a few other disciplines like engineering and so on. There are aspects, or even in public health or in some of those areas. There are aspects of India that might replicate in some of those countries, right? So which is the absence of very strong institutional structures, the infrastructure which is somewhat patchy, data which is not always there. So for people to be making decisions on important topics, maybe there are things that they can learn here and which will be valuable when they take them back to their own countries. So if you can think about those, then those would be the kind of features that we would be talking about, that people can come here and can learn. So just to throw something out, frugal innovation is something that people talk about quite a lot. In India, we do it quite a lot, right? So it's something that countries where there's a scarcity of resources, they can come and they can try and learn some of those things here.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you for that. Yes, Pratham, you're up next.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I was figuring out where to go to college when I was in class 12, I just looked at the top 15 ranked universities and I applied to all of them.
Okay.
I think, and that's what a lot of international students do when they haven't visited the campuses, they rely on rankings. And so I remember that, Penn was the highest ranked institution I got in, which was, I think, rank 3, wasn't bad at all. And so I went there. Had I gone into a rank 2 university, I would have probably gotten there. So I think a lot of the decision-making by international students rests on the rankings of the universities. And while our management institutions have done a great job of cracking into top 100, our universities at large still have a long way to cover. And we have a few universities here in the audience, I can see, who have got into top 200, top 250. But as soon as we can get into that top 10 ranking, I think that's when we'll start seeing a much larger influx of students coming in, and especially from Western countries as well.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
But isn't it a problem that it's that way too? If we talked about that, which is what we really want as learner-centric universities and organizations for students to know, or learners to know, that it's magic in the learning at any point in your life when you choose a place that meets the need that you have as a learner at that time. So I hope we can open that up as well, so that it's maybe less about rankings and more about learning outcomes that universities are driving.
Right. So Lisa, I just to push you on that, Pratham's point, at least for most Indian students, they actually know very little about the university they're going to it's not, they've not experienced it, but they're going just with the information. So I think I kind of agree with what Pratham is saying is you get higher up on the rankings, and then people will choose you, they'll discover what comes after they come in a sense.
Yeah, it's a similar experience for us now that we're working with Avenue and Amity and Univo and having our programs here. So it's what people know or don't know about us. So I think that's bi-directional.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And
If I can add,
yes.
Madan pointed out a very important thing, that students go for economic opportunities, right? And that's why there's such a huge influx or outflux from here to Western countries. But look at other opportunities for which students from outside will come here. Economic is just one part of our existence. How about the spiritual?
Okay.
Have you looked at Isha Foundation? Have you looked at Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's, place in Bangalore? And it's flooded with people from outside. What are they looking for? Spiritual opportunities.
Right.
Spiritual opportunities. Now, those places are not giving degrees, but it's education nevertheless, right? That's what people are flocking for. So it's not, if we don't encapsulate it just within 18 years, 22 years age group, for college education, people are coming for education to India from all countries. Right. And even for 18 to 22, the kind of opportunities that India provides, we haven't marketed that. The heterogeneity that we have in this country is unbelievable. Nowhere in the world you have so many languages. Nowhere in the world you have so many foods, right? So many categories of food. We haven't marketed that. It provides incredible opportunities for students to work in this kind of environment. And as Madan pointed out, there isn't enough data. Data is starved, or not sufficient data system if you want to study, which is a great challenge for AI, for ML, for all of these. If you float those as projects, I'll give you a concrete example that when I was visiting US, I talked to several US universities and several deans of engineering, and I said that these are the kinds of challenges that communities in India have, agricultural communities or traders community in rural areas. These are the kinds of projects that we want our students to do. Go out to the community, talk to them, figure out the problem, and work on that, right? Everybody was excited about those problems, that our students will love these problems, right? So these are the kinds of things for which we can get students from everywhere. Students are students. They're looking for excitement. They're looking for exciting problems to work on, and in India offers that in plenty.
Oh yeah, a lot of excitement on the streets and everywhere else. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. So, okay, so yeah. While on that, just to add some color to the conversation, I think all of you went out of India to study, except Lisa, of course, the other three. And Lisa, you've traveled to India or maybe other parts of the world. So I want you to recount one of your culture shock experiences that also improved your understanding of that country, right? So both sides of it, right? So you went to some country, you saw something that was really surprising, but then after a while you realized, hey, this is what I learned from it, right? So just as a student experience, or it could be any other experience. So whoever, Pratham looks like he already has an incident. So Pratham, you can go first.
I think I remember when, I think it was an econ class, econ microeconomics class, and I was asked to write a paper, and the prompt was perhaps I think 1 line long, figure out, why the TARP doesn't work in the US system, right? And I was like, wait, so where is the material? Where are the books? What do I refer to? So in India, I think I was so used to getting direction and being spoon-fed everything. There, when suddenly I had an open prompt, I sort of fumbled. I remember that took a while. Then I, called up my friends and I was like, okay, help me, this and that. And then my American friends were, I think, much more adept at solving those kind of, yeah.
Cool. Can I go? Yeah.
So it's a kind of longish story, but I'll cut it really short. So I went to the University of Illinois straight from India. Champaign-Urbana, everyone talks about as a boring place. For me, it wasn't. First time outside of India. In my second year, in my first year, I took this course where the exam was open. You took the exam home, but it was honor. You would not open your books. You would not. You'd have to. It was a closed book exam. You did it at home, and once you unsealed the envelope, you had to take 3 hours to finish the exam. You weren't supposed to take more than 3 hours. So I was in my apartment, and with one of my cohort friends, Jim Schmidtke, who's a very close friend of mine. So the two of us, we went to I went into the bedroom, he was in the living room, and we were writing our answers. After about half an hour or 1 hour, I took a break, I came out. He also took a break. The break became about like a 3-hour break, we were shooting the breeze, we weren't doing anything. So the next morning, we were supposed to go and submit this exam. He took me in the car. I wasn't driving. He took me in the car. He said, Madan, I don't know what you're going to tell, but I'm going to tell Jim Wade, who was a prof. He said, I'll tell him I took 6 hours to do the exam instead of 3 hours. So I said, Jim, but we didn't take 6 hours. We only worked on it for 3 hours. He said, yeah, I know that, but Ann Cummings, who's our colleague, she would have definitely only taken 3 hours. She wouldn't have taken anything more than 3 hours. I don't want us to have been advantaged compared to her, so I'm just going to go and confess now, right? So I'm going to do this. You can do what you want. Of course, I had to, now that he's doing it, I also had to go and to be honest, right, in the way that I did it. But the point of the story is, right, so Jim taught me something at that point in time, and it's not just Jim. The honor system in the place, when it came to the way that you did exams, the way that you approached any of the work that you were doing, it was very different to anything that I'd experienced, because here it was much more about policing. It was much more about ensuring that you didn't cheat and so on. There it was much more internal, right? So, and that, I've always carried this lesson, you know. So, and I do joke with Jim that that he forced me to be honest, but that's just a joke, because ultimately when I think about it, that was one of the most valuable lessons that I took away from my first year there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Madan, for that. Yeah. Rudra, you? In the cold of New York?
Yeah, I can tell you lots of stories, but what I realized, so I grew up in a village in UP. So when I went for my master's, I went to University of Arizona in Tucson, and then I went to Cornell. What I realized in this whole process was that I was living a life which spans 300 years of human society. You know, I could see 17th century alive. I could see, 20th century all together. That was a fascinating observation for me, that, how long this span is. One thing that stands out in my memory is my master's problem I was working on. I wasn't able to crack it. I was very frustrated. And I went to a professor, who was on my thesis committee. And I told him that, you won't understand my frustration. I'm working on this problem for last 8 months, and I have not been able to crack this problem. And Professor Dadepo, he said, yes, I don't understand your frustration. And then he pulled out a piece of paper from his desk, from a drawer, and he said, I have been working on this problem for 18 years. And I haven't cracked that yet. So yes, I don't understand your frustration. And that stands out till today. That gave me a perspective on research that has lasted forever.
I've also never understood fraternities and sororities.
Okay.
That's another thing. College-sponsored drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just echo what I'm hearing from everyone, that it's when we travel or study in a place that is not our home country, it's humbling, right? It's humbling, and you do gain perspective. And for me, it's always a reminder, as it is being in India for the first time, we need each other.
Right.
So I think those are important lessons that we learn.
Thanks so much, Lisa. So yeah, so the point of this question really was, just as we experience when we go to another culture, I'm sure India can offer that kind of subliminal learning to students who come in here. My own little story is, of course, not so much about college, but when I first went to Boston, when I was driving around, it was my first time I ever lived in the US. So the bridges had this, the bridge may not be salted signs, right? So, and I've never lived in a cold place before. So I would always look at those signs and say, that doesn't make sense at all. So, why would a bridge be salted? And then it actually took me a long time. I had to speak to people and then find out what they're talking about. But yeah, so right there, right? So, good. So the last one I had, the last question on which you can hold forth a little bit. So here we are now crystal ball gazing, looking far into the future. So it's 2050. There's an article in the Economist or the Wall Street Journal or its equivalent from India, and they're writing about Indian universities, right? So, and what it will look like in 2050, and it's like a feature piece, right? So they're going to hold forth on it. What do you think they're going to write, right? So what is it going to have? And any of you can go first. Yeah.
Is it what we hope it is, or is it what we think it will be?
Then what do you hope it will be?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if there's so much of dichotomy.
That's
you're
a
a
good
young
distinction.
man.
It's a good distinction.
Pratham, you're the youngest in the panel, right? So you
I have to be
actually you
careful.
should be quite close to that. Okay.
I mean, I really hope that it would say that, like 3 or 5 Indian universities crack into the top 10.
Right, okay.
I think that's something I really look forward to, and hopefully being one of them.
Yeah, but it's a feature piece, so it'll have more things about education in India. So what are some more things that would be?
I think, as Indian universities, we haven't yet cracked research as well as some of the Western universities have.
Right.
So I think that would be one parameter I wish that we are able to crack.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, of course, mobility of students. If we actually can have more international students come into India. I know we mentioned that, we have students coming in from Africa, Southeast Asia, but can we even bring students from the US, from Europe? And thirdly, I mean, I really hope this becomes true that, we get more Olympic medals. So,
Right.
I think Stanford, if you were to rank the Olympic medals by country, and Stanford was a country, it would be ranked number 5 or number 6 in terms of number of medals won.
Okay.
And so I really hope, even in sports and other co-curricular activities, the Indian universities start competing at that global scale. I think all of these things would propel Indian universities to that top 10. I think those things will have to take place for India to come into top 10.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you. Rudra, your turn.
The title reads, The Remarkable Achievements of Indian Universities in Last 5 Decades.
Right.
Okay? That's the title.
Right.
And then it lists out how Indian universities have been able to solve problems of sustainability, climate change, and energy. These 3 global problems that Indian universities have solved for the whole world.
Wow. Wonderful. Lisa, you too. But yeah, yeah.
So I have just one, right? So not 3. The world over, I think, I hope it's changing, but the biggest challenge has really been that higher education has been out of reach for a lot of people. So people who need it, people who deserve it, and people whose lives are going to be dramatically improved on account of them getting higher education. So I do hope that Indian universities will be the ones that have the ability to provide really high quality education at prices that just about anyone can afford, right? So if we can, so that would be the one thing that I would hope for. Right.
In fact, that's echoed in the fact of, in a field like data, the price of data, the price of telecom, India is already the cheapest in the world, which has increased access to so many people. So it's a wonderful idea.
It's hard to add to these great headlines, but I appreciate so much what you said about access and attainment and affordability, given, as we've all talked, that education really is the core social determinant of health for all nations. So maybe something like fueled by global strategic partnerships, India surpasses all goals for education.
Wonderful.
Leads the way in the world.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks to the panel for all of that. We have about 8 minutes of questions. Open to the audience for questions. Yeah, please. I can give you my mic.
Hi, I'm representing Plaksha University out here. One question to all the esteemed panelists over here. You are all leading great institutions. When I look back 20, 25 years ago, and let me not make people guess my age, the education then and education now, I don't see much changing globally or in India, except for few universities, including what I'm part of. What do you see that changing in 50 years' time in terms of the kind of economic, social impact, as well as the future impact on the higher education?
Is that to anyone?
Yeah, to anyone, but I mean, please, I would like to hear some interspersed thoughts from everyone.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead, Madan.
I don't think it's just the last 20, 25 years, right? So the education and universities, while I have done a lot of great things, the structure of education has remained more or less constant for a very, very long period in time. People come at a particular age, they spend a certain amount of time in the university, they graduate, and then they go to work. And if at all, they come back at some point in time, if at all, right? So, it's tied to your age in life and where you need to get certain inputs. I think, so if you're looking at, prediction is always fraught, right? So you think about what's going to happen. And we're all afflicted with the belief that we live at a point of inflection, So maybe we're not, I don't know, but let's go with the idea that we do live at a point of inflection. I do think that universities have to come to terms with the fact that people will enter and exit as they feel that they need to have education, right? So they're not going to spend the 4 years here at a particular age and getting certain kinds of input. So there will be people coming in and getting it in probably in short bursts, going away, doing something else, coming back in again and doing that. So I would hope that that's what it will be going towards, so you'll, universities have to find a way to cater to that. So it will become a little bit more personalized, but it will also be in terms of just a cohort, the meaning of what a cohort is, the meaning of what people are coming at one point. I'm thinking that will change quite a lot in the next, and that is probably going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years itself. We are not even going forward for the next 50 years.
Yeah, I would echo and underscore that. I think it's already happening. In talking to so many of you, you're driving that. We are as a collective here, that learners can choose their pathways, the pathways that open up opportunity and social mobility for more individuals, and more recognition that has to be across the whole life course. The gift in life is to be curious and to have a learner's mindset. And so we have to make that affordable and accessible for more people. But it does require us in education, as you said, to, if places are still doing this, time to stop sitting together on a hill, whatever that is, and deciding the way we think it needs to be, and that a learner will take our structure, but to listen more, to listen much more intently to learners and change our models based on their needs. People first, always.
I think we do need to innovate far more than we have, we are seeing even right now. It's so true what you said, that education structure hasn't changed much, but now the churn is a lot. Whether you talk to students, talk to parents, talk to educators, there is a lot of churn. All of us are uneasy about how things have been and how they ought to be. So universities are going to face a lot of pressure for innovation, continuous innovation. Just think of what has happened in the face of ChatGPT, that everybody is jumping up and down. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, it's a good question, and universities got to see this coming, right? Universities are the places which are supposed to forecast such things and be ready and prepare our students for that. So what Madan said, first of all, that's going to change drastically. How students, what kind of cohorts come in. You shouldn't be just coming at 18. You can come at 35, 55 and pursue a degree, a class full of people who are, 18 to 35 years old to 55-year-old. All of that is going to happen. But even in terms of research, what kind of research is going to happen in universities, how we are going to conduct our research, all of this is undergoing a huge change. A lot of global partnerships are required, lots of them, not just one and two, lots of them. We have to work together. Our problems are much bigger. You heard from ASU that, grand challenges are what they look at as departments. We do the same at Plaksha. We don't have traditional departments. Grand challenges is what we are after. So grand challenges require all kinds of partnerships. Then only you can, tackle these problems. So students are also going to be far more interdisciplinary, right? They are going to be trained in interdisciplinary sciences, arts, call it whatever, and humanities, right? All drawn in together. There is going to be radical change in education. And that's why, universities like Plaksha or, what ISB started or what Ashoka started, These are radical thinkers, and that's what we are going to see in near future.
Just one thing I'd like to add is I think the classroom needs to change a lot. The thing is that in large part of India, it's still about a teacher standing in front of students, speaking for 45 minutes, and then 6 months later, students taking an exam on the information that was shared in a lecture 6 months ago. That's still the mode of education. I think the classrooms need to become a lot more immersive. They need to be close to the industry. And this is one example that comes to my mind. When I was taking an accounting class my freshman year, my professor, he did not teach us accounting. There were no slides, there were no books, there were no exams. All he asked us to do was figure out a client, a small restaurant or a food truck on campus, and go and audit their books. That's it. That's it. And we had to submit our audit report, and that was Accounting 101. So I really hope that the classroom in India, or across the world for that matter, I think it needs to change, really becomes more immersive.
We just have 1 minute, so I think you have a question, but please answer it in 60 seconds, so we are out of here on time. Yeah.
I'll ask a very quick question to you, and probably, Pratham, you might want to answer that. My name is Atul Khosla. I'm Vice Chancellor of Shulini University. In the morning, there was a fascinating presentation where it said that in the future, cost is not going to be outcome. It's going to be quality that's going to be outcome. The world has disrupted. The best and the greatest companies are not what used to be. But this disruption has not happened in education so far in universities. So Pratham, you spoke about some Indian university achieving a top 10 rank. Forget the rankings, I'm saying from a prestige or a greatness perspective. I believe that's going to happen. So do you really think an Indian university will achieve a top 10 position and achieve greatness in the next 10 years? Do you think that's possible?
I've looked at the numbers. I'm building an institution right now from scratch, and with no legacy and with no baggage. And I look at the metrics, I look at the weightages of various parameters. I've done a simulation, and I feel that if we strategically build campuses, and if we strategically build our institutions, if we look at the right data, if we optimize for the right metrics, nothing can stop us in getting to top 10. It's a numbers game at the end of the day.
On that note, thanks everybody. We're out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. As the sign says, time's up. As Pratham said earlier, that's it.